Hi Ella, this is the first part of Chapter 4 of The Golden Aquarians for your work for today. Chapter 4. On Sunday morning, Walt crawled stiffly out of bed and reported to sickbay. Dr. Helgard x-rayed his chest and frowned over his bruises. "How did you come by these?" "Fell off a walkway." He decided it would be safer to stick to his story of the previous night. "Into water? You got these bruises falling into water?" "Maybe I hit the edge of the walkway," he muttered. "Or maybe you got beat up. Gordon and his gang?" "No," he looked up startled to see her eyes looking steadily into his. "Was it the Colonel?" He flushed angrily. How could she ask such a question? My father would never hit me. "Okay, I beg your pardon. Now sit here." She strapped his chest from armpits to waist and sent him home to take it easy for the rest of the day. He felt like a living mummy when he walked stiffly into class on Monday morning. "So I hear you had a fall on one of the walkways." "Bad luck," Mrs. Cunningham smiled sympathetically. Gordon whispered, "Earthluby," just loud enough for everyone to hear, and the boys laughed. "That's quite enough, Gordon. Settle down, everyone. Time for biology." On Friday, I was discussing the anatomy of the amphibian. This morning, we will work in pairs dissecting specimens. See if you can identify the various structures I spoke of. I suggest that one of each pair does the dissecting and the others the drawings. Less messy. There was a lot of shuffling around and horseplay as the students paired up and picked the best places at the bench under the window. When they'd settled down, Walt found himself standing alone in the middle of the room, looking at Slovag. The two outsiders, he thought. She twitched her stiff braids back over her shoulder. "Come on then," she said stiffly. "I suppose you want to have all the fun and do the dissecting." Walt looked at the frog-like creature laying on its back on the cutting board. Its arms and legs were widespread, exposing its pale belly. The rest of its skin was a smooth pale green, though its head was tipped back, exposing the throat, so he couldn't see its face. He felt sure that the eyes would be amber-colored and slanting. The same, only much, much smaller. He shuddered, swallowed sudden nausea, and managed to say casually, "That's all right. You go ahead. I'm pretty good at drawing." "All right," she beamed at him. When she smiled, he couldn't help noticing that her small, pale face lit up and she looked okay. She pulled on a pair of plastic gloves, picked up the scalpel, and skillfully slit the belly skin across and down. "I'll pin the flaps back, and you can draw the muscle structure of the abdomen. Then I'll dissect an arm and a leg before we go into the abdomen. Okay by you?" "Sure." Walt tried to concentrate on his drawing, getting each fold of exposed muscle in the correct place, with the fibers running in the right direction, trying not to think of the frog-like face among the reeds. "Your drawing's pretty good. So is your dissection." "I'm going to be a surgeon like Mom when I grow up, but not on missions like this." Her voice sounded scornful. "I'll go to some planet where they need doctors and help make everyone well again. It'll be great. I suppose you'll be a terraformer like your father?" Though her voice wasn't rude, Walt found himself flushing with his neck right up to his forehead. "No, I won't," his voice rose. "I don't know what I'll be, but it won't be that." "Shh! You don't have to shout. I'm going to slit the tissue and expose the organs now. Got a fresh piece of paper?" "Okay." Walt took a deep breath, surprised at the anger that had suddenly surged through him. He admired his father more than anyone in the galaxy, didn't he? He wanted to be just like him, didn't he? As he began to draw the internal organs of the amphibian, he found himself sneaking sideways looks at Slovag. Her tongue was nipped between her teeth, and her concentration was total as she probed carefully at the small carcass. Walt found himself envying her singleness of purpose. It must be great to know where you're supposed to be going, what you're supposed to do with your life. "Your mum fixed my ribs." She's awfully good, isn't she? Yeah, she's kind of neat as a mum, too. There when you need her, but she doesn't get in the way, you know. Walt nodded, though he really didn't. Aunt Gloria had been enormously kind, but she had fussed. Come on then, wake up, she nudged him. I'm lifting the liver and heart out of the way. Say, if you want to leave the labeling till we're finished, I can do it for you. I'm fine. He felt himself bristling. Now that her voice was, not that her voice was actually bossy, but I do remember Friday's class. Sorry. They worked on in silence. What's that bit behind there? You mean you don't know? Her eyebrows went up. He flushed and she giggled. Well, I don't know either. We'll have to ask Miss Cunningham. Something special to Aqua, I guess. Animals are different all over, you know. 2 hearts, 2 livers, different breathing apparatus, things like that. Makes it interesting. If I weren't going to be a doctor, I'd be a comparative biologist. What were you doing on Saturday, by the way? She went on in the same tone of voice, so that for a minute the significance of her question didn't hit him. Then he stared at her guiltily. Why had she asked? She had never asked him anything before. She couldn't know about his adventure, could she? The walkway busted and I cracked my ribs, he said carefully. Oh, in that order? He felt himself getting hot. What do you mean? What were you doing before that? All day. I saw you go, if you remember. I thought it'd be fun to go too. She didn't sound accusing, but he felt suddenly mad at her. She had no right making him feel guilty. Just exploring. He kept his voice vague, bored sounding. It was his secret, after all. She shrugged and tossed back a braid that had slipped forward over her shoulder. Okay, if that's the way you want it. It was as though a light had switched off. Her face wasn't lively and glowing anymore. She looked plain and dull. They finished the dissection and the drawings in silence. As she ripped off her gloves, he looked up to find her staring at him. His palms began to sweat. He found himself stammering. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... No problem, she shrugged. He managed a light laugh. I'd like to take you up on that offer of judo lessons. Her eyebrows went up. With cracked ribs? Come on! Walt stared down at his drawings, struggling with his need to be safe from Gordon's harassing and his need to tell someone his enormous secret. I want to tell you about it, he found himself saying. But not here, not now. She glanced past him at Gordon and Lee, who were noisily fooling around next to them. She nodded. Yeah, okay. She gave him a sudden smile that made the ache in his ribs and the itch of the plaster seem unimportant. For a minute he wanted to jump up and sing. Then he took a deep breath and neatly labeled the last drawing, trying to keep his hand from shaking. What had he gone and done? He couldn't possibly tell her exactly what had happened. She'd think he was crazy. He'd have to make up something to put her off. He stared down at the neatly dissected frog creature, its inner mysteries unveiled by Slovag's scientific scalpel. She had laughed at him. Laugh and tell the others either they'd think he'd made up the whole thing and it'd be as bad as the birthday poem, or else maybe they'd believe him, and that would be worse. He couldn't bear the thought of them trampling through the secret caves, shining their floodlights onto the starry roof. What was he to do? Look, would you like to come to dinner? Mum won't mind. Don't you eat in the cafeteria? Not if I can help it. Mum's a fabulous cook, and she likes to keep her hand in. I get to eat her experiments, even breaded frog's legs. She began to laugh and then stopped at the expression on his face. It's not gross. Honestly, it's not. Better than camp food. Like chicken, really. You're not a vegetarian, are you? It's okay if you are. He shook his head. It's not that. She laughed. I won't press you. If you really want to eat cafeteria food, go ahead. You could come over after supper if you like, and we can talk then. I don't know if Father... He stopped at the expression on her face. He couldn't see to bear the light switch off again. He was going to have to risk telling her everything. Maybe she wouldn't laugh. Maybe it would be a good idea. Okay, after dinner. I would like that, thanks. Walt was in the bathroom, trying to slick his hair into shape when his father came home. What are you up to, boy? All dressed up? Just going down to the surgery. Your ribs bothering you? No, Father, I'm fine. Dr. Helgard's daughter, Slovak, is in my class, that's all. She asked me over. Go right ahead, son. His father was beaming. Walt could almost see him, thinking, at last my son stopped writing poetry and is going out with girls. He's normal. Walt hesitated outside the surgery. It was a long building with living quarters at one end. He could hear voices and laughter, and he felt like an intruder. But once the door was open, he was drawn effortlessly into the family warmth. They chatted for a while. Slovak mixed up a synthetic fruit drink for them and then turned to her mother. I guess you're pretty busy, aren't you, Mum? Yes, I dare say I have some work to catch up on. Her eyes twinkled and she went into the surgery, leaving them together. Walt's mouth fell open. He had never in a million years dared to dismiss his father in that casual, joking way. Slovak sat down next to Walt and linked her hands around her knees. Well, go ahead and tell me what really happened. I'm dying of curiosity. It's not that much, he stammered. Just that I was exploring over on that other hill, and I fell down a hole into a cave. He scuffed his feet on the floor. She laughed. Walt, you're a terrible liar. You can't have had any practice at all. Come on, I know there's much more to it than that. What do you mean? He felt his cheeks getting hot. You're making it sound like falling into a cave just nothing. A cave! So what is it you're hiding? Nothing really, he stumbled over the words. Walter Elliot, listen to me. I'm pretty much on my own here. Because Mum's the doctor, it makes her an officer like your father, like you. I don't have any friends. It's okay. I'm kind of used to it. But it'd be a lot more fun if we did things together, don't you think? Yes, it would. I would like that very much. Well then, friends don't have secrets from each other, and they don't lie about things, right? I suppose. Walt pulled himself together. I mean, sure, you're right. I'd like to tell you, but it's all so weird. You'll never believe me. Maybe none of it did happen. Maybe I just hit my head and imagined everything. Like what? She was on him like a dog on a gopher. Kinda like lights, he muttered feebly, in the cave. Lights? Her eyes looked at him the way Dr. Helgard's had, scientific and yet kind at the same time. Were they natural, do you suppose? I don't know. You do, though, don't you? Come on, Walt, tell me. No, better than that. Show me. Wow, imagine exploring a cave unknown to all other humans. Please, Walt, it'd be such fun. And Aqua's so boring. Well, I suppose he felt himself giving way weakly to the pleading in her hazel eyes. But to go back into the darkness? Promise? She shot back, her eyes suddenly snapping. When he nodded, she gave him another beaming smile. He felt suddenly that he'd been had, that somehow she got him to precisely this point of not being able to back out. Then he wondered if she could read his mind, because she started laughing. It was so infectious that he found himself reluctantly joining in, all of the time wondering, what am I doing? It'll be all right, Walt. You can trust me. Truly you can. And maybe 2 heads will be better than 1. He stared. What for? For thinking with, dummy. If the lights aren't a natural phenomenon, if there really is an intelligent species on Aqua, then we have no right to be here, have we? It was the way she was with the scalpel, he thought, direct and cutting, with no wasted motions. She was already way ahead of him, prepared to accept the possibility of intelligent beings on Aqua. Yes, of course, that's the problem exactly. Only, there can't really be intelligent beings here, can there? It stands to reason. That's what we're going to have to find out. Then we can decide what we're going to do about it, right? He frowned. He was beginning to dislike her habit of backing him into a corner and jumping to conclusions. I'm just going to show you a cave, Slovak. I know, but I'm sure it's linked with the mysterious lights, and maybe with the dissolving walkways and the snails. This is exciting. There's more to Aqua than meets the eye, Walt Elliot. He had the feeling that she was right. Again. And Ella, this is where we're going to stop for today. And now you can look at the work that we are going to do with this part of the chapter.